Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Venn Pod, episode 4, but version 2, because we had technical difficulties.
Yes, Wi-Fi stinks, everybody, especially when you're apartment hopping. It's the worst.
Honestly speaking. But on today's episode, well, first of all, I'm Alex, and next to me, I hope I'm pointing in the right direction and Zoom doesn't flip this, is my co host.
I'm Hannah.
So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about doubt, disappointment, and comparison. I feel like as a musician, we experience either one or all three of these at least once a year, at least.
I was gonna say try a day.
I was like once a month, but I didn't want to sound like crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I was like
No,
once a year.
no, let's be real. Like this is a daily battle, and I feel like I struggle with these, like even more than I normally would, having placement auditions on the horizons. And I know that's on the horizon for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
whether it's like your first year in music school, whether it's your first year in a new program like me, whether it's your first year in a new degree like Alex, like we're probably all feeling some level of like, oh my gosh, like, am I actually ready? Am I actually qualified for this? The answer is yes, but we're going to talk about how other people, how all of you deal with those feelings of doubt and disappointment and also self doubt too. So we are super excited to share with all of you what was said. You guys are so wise. Like all of your responses, reading through them, like,
They're deep. They're
yeah.
deep. So we asked a few questions on our Instagram. We said, how do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with self-doubt / imposter syndrome? And how do you deal with comparison? So like Hannah said, we're going to be basically sharing you guys' feedback and just kind of speaking on that, on our experiences, and like adding or maybe subtracting. I don't think we're going to subtract anything, but mostly just adding onto the points that you guys made on how you guys deal with these issues. So let's get into it.
Yes, absolutely. So let's do the question about disappointment first. How do you deal with disappointment?
And first up is Tucker_Ramsey 17. Now, I mean, every time I read this, even though this is version 2 of the pod, like it's just so deep. They
Mhm.
said, realize that it takes failure for success to feel even better. What do you have
Is
to
that
say about
true?
that?
I was gonna say, isn't that so true though? I mean, failure feels so terrible in the moment. Like whenever you play something and you know that it stunk, you just kind of like crumble inside. You're like, I can play it better. I know I can. But when in the moments where you play something so awesome that you're like, yeah, I did that. Like, look at me go. Like, it takes those moments of just feeling like, oh, I know I can do better to make the moments of, yeah, I did that even sweeter. And those moments of failure are such teachable, such learning moments, I feel. And they kind of like help you track your growth, like how far you've come from where you started on your musician journey to where you are now. How about
Mhm.
you?
I never really thought about that, like until I read this response, and I'm like, wow, like that is so true. Like it takes the bad times to make the good moments feel so grand. Like in the moment when those failures do occur, yeah, it sucks. Like I'm not even gonna lie, but like when the good times happen, you're like, I did that. I'm proud of that. So I agree with this statement entirely. I wouldn't even say that that would have been something that I would have said. Like, how do you deal with disappointment? I just try to take it lightly. Like, it's hard because no one says that they take disappointment easily. And I think it's so easy for us to just sit in the negative and not remember that positive and good times are to come. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle Henkel actually says something exactly about that. He says He says that he deals with disappointment by telling themselves that it happens and that disappointment is short lived. So I think that's really good advice. Like, disappointment is gonna happen, that's inevitable in our career. Like, at some point, we're not going to measure up to the standard that we have for ourselves, but just not dwelling in that and trying to move on and learn from that, I think is a really healthy stance to take. Like, you don't need to beat yourself up over something that you are disappointed about. Like, if you feel that you have fallen short, like, there's no need to just sit in that and make yourself feel any worse, because that's not going to help you grow. That's not going to help you move on. That's not going to help you like better your skills. So, just say it happens. It happens to everybody. Literally every person on this planet, does not measure up to the ideal standard that they have for themselves at some point. So just realize that it's a thing that happens. Disappointment and making mistakes is how we grow. Like we were saying in the last point, if we just succeeded all the time, then we wouldn't know what growth felt like. Like we wouldn't know how to move forward, how to get better. It's in our mistakes that we learn how to like evolve and, hone our skills and stuff like that. So I definitely think that you shouldn't dwell in feelings of disappointment because that's not healthy, but you should take those feelings of disappointment and channel it into, okay, so how can I make this better for next time? Or what can I learn from this?
And then when Kyle says, because this is Kyle's statement, like it happens, like it really does happen. Like it's not a big shock factor that you messed up. Like we feel as the performer, it is, oh my gosh, like I've nailed that 1,000 times. Like how dare I mess up? But something we were saying when we recorded previously is like something my professor, Dr. Spring, told me, where it's like, for a recital, for example, you're playing for an hour. He said, you're going to make a mistake. Like he said it point blank, period. And I think not normalize, but in a sense, if we normalize that mistakes are going to happen, you won't fear them and be sad about it as much. Because that really helped me in the way I approached performing in recitals. Like I wasn't afraid to mess up. Like I went to my recitals happy and ready to perform regardless of if I made a mistake now. And that's not saying that I'm not as prepared, but it's just acknowledging the fact that a mistake will happen. Like I'm playing for an hour, like it's going to happen. Just recover.
Absolutely. Like even when you think about it mathematically, like notes and time, like something is going to happen. And I feel like it's really easy for us to slip into like a mindset of like adoration, or like to put on our rose colored glasses whenever we see a really great performer like Dr. Spring, if you've ever seen him perform, or like Dr. Gardner. We just saw Doreen Ketchens at ICA. Like whenever you see someone like that, you're like, how could they ever make a mistake? Like they are perfect. They're amazing. But the reality is it's not that they're not making mistakes. It's that they're recovering from their mistakes better than maybe somebody our age would. You know what I mean? So like it's not that they're not making mistakes. They just have learned over time to come back from their mistakes in a more smooth way. And I think that's a good lesson for us, because like our heroes, it's good to be inspired by people. It's good to look up to people and have those people that are like, oh my gosh, like I want to be able to play like them someday. But don't adopt the mindset that they're like perfect in all things or they can do no wrong, because the reality is they totally do make mistakes.
Oh
They're
yeah.
really good at covering it up.
Yeah. And something that I didn't see earlier is something that Korean Scott Allen said, is processing it with my circle of people I trust. Like every time I'm disappointed in how I performed, it's not that, like, let's use Hannah, for example. It's not that I go to her and be like, well, that was trash. No, like a lot of the times I feel like my family, and maybe even Hannah included, we ask, how did you feel about that? It's like almost like a vent session, and not like I hated my playing. No, it's like, I think overall it went well, but there was one mistake that I really didn't like. And like, you don't really go into details, but like just letting that out rather than letting it like just build up inside of you that that one mistake really made you angry. I feel like I just let it out and I move on. I really like that.
I remember whenever you had your master's recital and I texted you, I was like, I'm so proud of you. Like that was so great. I really enjoyed it. How do you feel? And you were like, I feel really good, except for this one thing. And then you said, oopsie. And
Yeah.
that's all it was. Just like, oopsie. It came and it went, it happened, and it was still an amazing performance. So like that's all you can chalk it up to, is like, oops, like she was prepared, she was ready, she played her tail off. It was amazing. If you haven't seen her recital, you should all go back and watch it. But like, those things happen. It's just life. And isn't that how we define success, though? I mean, how you feel about an experience is so much of what success is. Like, even if something to a group of outsiders like flops, if you feel good about it inside, then that's a personal success for you.
Yep.
Like, success is how you feel and how you frame the situation. So you are ultimately in charge of whether disappointment like dwells in your mind or whether you can like chalk things up to a success. And I think that's a really powerful mindset to adopt.
Yep. Okay, preacher Hannah.
All right. Okay.
Was that all we wanted to hit from this one? I'm looking through other responses. I like your sister's response, playing the French horn.
You know what? There's no room for French horn players on a clarinet podcast. That's all I'll say. No,
This
I'm
is
kidding.
a musicians podcast.
I'm
We
kidding.
appeal to all the people.
Joking.
Oh,
Well, something else that I wanted to add though, this kind of goes with Korean Scott Allen's comment, and then also with Chris's comment, Chris Alex's comment, our good friend Chris. I also process with my circle of trusted people. So obviously Alex is in that circle as a musician, but I also really find value in sharing my disappointment with people who are not necessarily musicians. My grandparents come to mind. They are such devoted supporters of like my musical endeavors and of my career, which is really sweet. They're not musicians. So I can talk with them and they're not going to necessarily understand like, oh, like I really wish my dynamics would have been more vivid at this point, or I really wish I would have phrased this differently. Like they don't really understand or, get all that in conversation. But what they can point me back to is like the work that I have done and my inherent value as a person. Like I feel like so often we can hang all of our worth on a single moment and like, oh, if I didn't make this happen, then I must be less of a musician, or my work ethic must not be good enough because this singular thing didn't happen. So I find a lot of value in talking with people who aren't necessarily musicians because they're really good at pointing me back to, no, but see, you did this, and this along the way to set yourself up for success. It just didn't happen that one time. It wasn't my time, like Chris said. And who knows why those things happen, but I think that we can learn a lot from those oopsies, like Alex says.
yeah. And a point you made earlier, which I think in a way relates to this, is like speaking to a non-musician, but like a different approach is reflecting on yourself and your personal growth. And it was from B flat Matt. And they said, watching great past performances I did. So do you want to touch on that? Because I know you spoke on that first last time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea too, because whenever you can look back and point to those moments of success, like, look, in this moment of great pressure, I succeeded and I made great art happen. You can look back and see, like, oh, just because I failed or I'm disappointed in this moment now, that doesn't take away from my past moments of success. And then it also doesn't take away from my future moments of success. Like my failure right now doesn't keep me from being able to be successful in the future. And I think that's important to realize is like, I know it's so easy to feel like, your present failure or your present disappointment is like casting a shadow over all, past and future achievements, but it's not. The reality is you've come a long way. You've had a lot of really great successes along the way that have ultimately brought you to where you are now. And you said something earlier which I really loved, which
I
is
think
about
this, wait, but I think this is gonna tie into the second question we asked.
girl, pop off. Go ahead.
Okay, it's how do you deal with self-doubt or imposter English? I don't even want to say it. Imposter syndrome.
How do you
Okay.
deal with that?
Well, let's talk about Tucker underscore Ramsey 17 again.
Preacher Tucker. Tucker was
Preacher
bringing the
Tucker,
goods.
Tucker underscore Ramsey, if you're watching this, you're a wise person, okay?
Yes.
But I think it ties into what Hannah was saying because a lot of the times we want to dwell in that failure, but we don't remember how far we've come. And it's like we've dreamed of certain milestones, getting into a master's program. For myself, getting into a DMA program, but yet as a musician and as a determined individual in general, we tend to always think of what's the next goal rather than just being content with where we are and the fact that we just achieved a dream. Like, why are we so hard on ourselves? Like, be happy for a moment, Alex. Be happy. Like, you just did that. So you want to keep going? That's what I said.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's so easy. Like whenever we have these dreams, I feel like we don't dream of the day-to-day grind, right? Like we don't dream of the bad practice sessions. We don't dream of the read that just betrayed you in the audition. We don't dream of staying up too late, getting up too early to get in that practice, right? Like we just see the milestone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's really important for us to like adopt a mindset of just gratitude for how far we've come and for being in the present moment. And somebody, actually, my friend Erica Everest, she writes in about this. She's actually not a musician by trade. She's a great piano player, but she's actually a scientist for her work. She's in grad school right now. But she wrote in that she tries to remind herself that she is there to learn and not to be perfect. And so she thinks that practicing gratitude and reminding herself that she's here to learn, it really helps her in her dealing in her feelings of doubt and in her imposter syndrome. And I think that's really powerful of just reminding yourself, I am so grateful for how far I've come. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn, even if that opportunity comes with failure, even if it comes with disappointment. And I think as musicians, we are imperfect people striving to produce perfect art, which will never happen, which is a kind of a weird dichotomy, a weird, uncomfortable space to live in because our goal is perfection, but we know that we'll never like be totally perfect. So I think just like having grace with yourself, just being like, yes, I do make mistakes and I'm here to learn. I'm not here to be perfect. That's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. Sidebar, I come from a very small program. Alex and I went to Messiah, so I'm coming from like a studio of 6 where I've been principal for the
That's
last
bigger
2
than
years
what I experienced.
to a studio of 75 where I have no idea where I stack up. So like I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself in the present to be perfect. I'm like, I've got to be perfect now. But the reality is I'm here to keep learning. I'm here to keep honing my skill. I don't need to be a 2 years master's level right now. I need to be just where I am right now. And if I keep on putting in the work, if I keep showing up every day, I will be just fine. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really healthy mindset to adopt, is just being grateful for where you are every day and having grace with yourself, realizing that I don't have to be perfect today. I just need to be consistent. I think that's a much better mindset to have. I just need to be consistent and my work will pay off in the long run.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I was like, is because you said something and like just triggered something in my brain where I tell people this all the time. I feel like coming from a small program, again, it's so easy to enter a big competitive program, which is where you're going and where I am too, or a lot of schools in comparison to our studio. And it's like, it's so easy to compare yourself to others. Like that is just what a musician does naturally. What you have to learn to do is to turn that off and take a different approach. And for me, whenever people ask why I tend to be on the chill side when it comes to like results at placements, like, yeah, I might be like a little, for like a minute, like literally a minute. But after that, I like remember that I'm on my own journey. Like at the end of the day, it's me and I'm trying to get here. That's them and they're trying to get there. Like I know where I started, and this is when I truly like self-reflect and realize how far I've come and where I am going and where I'm going to get. Because I think a lot of the times we look at this person and where they are at, but do we know the work they put in to get there? No, because that's their journey and they're on their path. And I need to get on my path and focus on that and stop like dwelling in that negativity of like, oh, they're so much better than me. Oh, I suck. Oh, they do that good. I need to try and do that like them. But it's like, appreciate them as a musician and learn from that, or like just appreciate it, but don't compare journeys.
Yeah, Absolutely. When you start to compare, I feel like the doubt starts to set in. As soon as you look at somebody else and start, measuring yourself against them, that's when the doubt starts to come in. So that I feel like those quotes were really good for dealing with like doubt. How do you deal with imposter syndrome? Or let's see how you guys dealt with imposter syndrome. Um,
Someone said something interesting. It was Beholder's Eyes 69. They actually said, I watch inspirational musicians on IG to motivate me. Started playing yesterday, which is interesting because it could go two ways, right? It could be like you get inspired by seeing Ricardo Morales play on Instagram, right? Or you see someone your age playing on Instagram and now you're like triggered. It's like, eh.
don't you hate when that happens when you see
But it's
someone
so
your age?
weird because it's like one thing motivates me and one thing triggers me in that
Right.
mindset of imposter syndrome. So it's like,
Yeah, I totally get that. First of all, Beholder's Eye, nice job. Like getting started playing again, like that's a really
right?
like tough step to take, especially when you've been away from your instrument for a while. So,
Mhm.
first of all, kudos to you. Keep us posted. Yeah, but I totally agree with what you said. Like it's a fine line to walk. I really value Instagram for the reason that you said that it, puts a lot of really great musicians on display for you to be inspired by. But like whenever I see somebody my age, or especially when I see like a 12-year-old just like popping off, I'm like, why do I even do it? Like why? Like what am I even doing here? But like my goal is not to be a prodigy. I've passed that. I know I'm not a prodigy. Like that's not
Mhm.
gonna happen for me at
We're
age
just
20.
a little too late.
We're
Like,
just a little too old for
just
that.
like maybe 20 years. Small, small things.
Yeah. But, definitely surrounding yourself with other great artists, and I feel like is a good thing to do to help keep you motivated and to like kind of remind you what you're striving for. I also feel like just being honest and open about feeling like an imposter is really powerful too. Like so often we're like, "Oh my gosh, like everybody thinks I'm a fake, like everybody thinks I'm not good enough to be here." But the reality is they're not even thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. So if you're just honest and open about like, I'm really nervous about this, or I don't feel totally qualified to do this, chances are nobody else is feeling 100% qualified or 100% confident about that either. So there's power in transparency. Like you can be honest about that stuff, and you'll not only like give yourself like the freedom to be comfortable, but you'll make a lot of the other people around you feel comfortable as well, because everybody's thinking it, they're just too afraid to say it. Isn't that the truth with so much of this stuff?
Yeah, and something else I was thinking in terms of imposter syndrome, someone posted some, I wish I took a screen grab of it the other day, but it kind of ties into the awareness of self and just reflecting on the fact that you are where you are and like you did that. So, in addition to that, someone posted like it's appreciating the compliments you're given. I think a lot of the times we get complimented, but that kind of like just, it's like a fly. It's like shoo
I
it
know that's
away.
a really
And
hard
then you
part to
like hone in onto the negative of like what's happening. Listen to your old performances. Like you do sound good. And I think for me, when imposter syndrome does come, I don't necessarily listen to the IG people. Like honestly speaking, I listen to myself because it's like I need to recognize that I could perform, I could play. So let's not even think about that I can't play. Like what? Girl.
That's just not true.
Yeah.
There's like a really popular audio on TikTok right now, and it's like, just because you think it doesn't mean that it's true. Your brain's a little meanie and it lies to you. I mean, it says something else, but I'm not going to say that on the podcast. You know what I mean? Have you heard this? I'm like, that's so true though. Like, it's a catchy little audio, but like, it's so true. Like, just because you think it does not mean that it's true. Like, look at the proof of your journey and see how far you have come. Like, see what you are capable of and know that you're still capable of that, even if
Yeah.
you're having a bad read day. Or in my case, I just like wasn't using my air during my practice right before this. I was like sounding like total trash. And I was just like, well, how about some more air? And it was like perfect
Game
instantly. And
changer.
I was like, what have I been doing for the past hour? I was like, this is ridiculous. So just like stuff like that, you know? But I feel like this ties in really well to what everybody wrote in about comparison. And I think we got the most responses on comparison because this is such a big thing that we deal with. I mean, I'm sure that musicians in general deal with this more than the average person does, but especially because of social media and musicians on social media, this is like a super hot topic for us. So, Beholder's Eye 69 says, everyone has their own journey. Others are inspiring, but I only compare me to my progress. And I think that speaks perfectly to what we were just talking about. Yes, absolutely look to others to be inspired. Absolutely look to others to celebrate their abilities and to, appreciate their goals. But only you can compare yourself to you because you're on your own journey, you're on your own path.
And that ties into something that Kyle Henkel said, which is you don't. Best you can do is focus and compare yourself to you when you first started. And I think all of this, oh, and then Chris said, I try to realize that everybody's at different stages in their journey and focus on what I can learn from someone instead of comparing to put myself up or down.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of value. I think that you can find that strength of, identifying somebody else's talent or somebody else's, strengths. I think there's like a lot of power in, surrounding yourself with people who are really strong at the things you're not good at. Like whenever I got to Messiah my first year, I was not good at a lot of things, but my stand partner was Alex, and so constantly playing with her and constantly like hearing her sound and learning from what she knew and the things that she could do, I never saw like the stuff that she was good at as like a threat to my abilities. I was never like, oh, well, I'll never be this because Alex is this. I was always like, oh my gosh, like I can learn so much from her. She's a great musician. She has experiences and knowledge that I don't have. And I feel like she really made me better in that way. And so I will always be thankful for that. But I would hope that for all of you, that you would find not only friends, if not friends, then just colleagues who you can
Yeah.
point to and be like, they are great and I want to be like that. And then you chase after that, not for the sake of like beating them out, but for the sake of becoming better yourself.
Yeah, and I think, well, first off, likewise, like Hannah knows that I fed off of her as well. And even when we do virtual projects, we still feed off of each other. And I think it's just going to be like a lifelong thing where we just like, I like that. I'm going to try that. Or dang, she's good at that. I'm going to
You're
work on
not
that.
getting out of this anytime soon. Oh my
Never. But I think in general, like the biggest takeaway is mindset. And I was trying to think, like, as you were talking, like, how did we get this mindset to like rethink the way we approach or think about comparison in general as a musician? Because typically when you think of comparison, it's negative. But like you and I, at least, and a lot of these responses, it looks like we have a different approach to comparison. Does that make sense? And I don't know how we got that. Like, I really don't, because I feel like you could see some of the extreme scenarios where a musician is like, you, no, but
yeah,
like,
I'm that person.
right. And it's like, I don't know, like, how, how did you get that approach? Like, what made you think of comparison in like a positive way, like so, a way to learn from someone rather than to hate someone, basically?
I think that okay, so there's a quote that goes along with why I think this, and I think it because it happened to us.
Oh,
Travis J. Weller, that's my dad, but he follows us. He's a faithful follower, but he says there's nobody like me, and the world should be thankful for that. So I think the fact that Alex and I both realized that we were unique individuals, that we both had strengths to offer that the other didn't, that we were unique people. I think that because we realized that our paths weren't competitive, like not that we weren't competitive, because we definitely challenged each other to constantly be our best, but like we weren't we weren't at each other's throats in the way that
normal.
you might find in like a big studio, if that makes sense. Like I feel like we valued each other as people first, and we realized that like our musical paths did not have to be it's me or you. Like they could work together and coexist in a really cool way. And so we were able to foster that really healthy, like growing relationship. So I think just like I don't know, taking your musician pants off and like appreciating somebody as a person for the work that they've done, for, you know, the things that they offer, your ensemble, your studio, you know, just appreciating those things about them first, and then realizing that they have great qualities as a musician that you would also like to adopt. You know, I think separating those two things is really helpful, and adopting the mindset of comparison doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can actually be a really positive thing when you go about it in a healthy way. Even when Alex and I give feedback, like we'll send a draft back and forth multiple times before we post it. I'll be like, I think this note at this measure is out of tune. And Alex will be like, okay, I'll fix it. And she fixes it. I'm not attacking her character as a person. I'm not attacking her integrity as a musician. It just is what it is. And we want our product to be the best that it can. So we both make sacrifices in that way. So I don't know. That's a long winded way of saying appreciate the person outside of their musicianship first. And then I think that comparison can happen in a healthy way because you're both, you know, realizing your value outside of your craft.
And I think something that you mentioned that I feel like a lot of people would take to heart is like you telling me a note is out of tune. Like, I don't even think of that as being something negative because, like, we just do it naturally. Like, we understand there's no disrespect coming from either one of us. Like, we know we have a mutual goals, and you said, like, we want the best product we could put together. So, even when we were in person, like, if we're being honest, people thought I was like a mean section leader because I am not the type of person to typically sugarcoat something. But also as a musician, I know like this could go two ways, like having hard skin and being able to take constructive criticism and understanding that it's not to diminish you as a person. It's rather us as a section, we need to collaborate and be able to effectively communicate where one may be lacking. Like I always used to say in sectionals, it's like, all of us are going to play our parts by ourselves, including myself. And it's like, you guys could put me on blast too. But I feel like people are so afraid of being honest with people within the musician space because they always see it as an attack rather than you trying to help someone. It's like, if we're playing something and I'm not in time, I'm like, Hannah, I don't think I'm in time. I'll wait for you to do it. And then it's like being able to acknowledge that you too can make a mistake.
Yes. You
So
know, music is such a personal craft. Like it's not like art where you make the sculpture or paint the thing and then you put it up and then you're separated from it. You know what I mean? Like music is an actively personal art. And so I feel like it's really easy for people to take, you know, criticism, whether it be constructive or not, criticism really personally. And I feel like that's something we need to get away from. Like, it's not an attack on you, it's not an attack on your integrity as a musician. It just is what it is. So if you want the best product possible, then collaborate.
sorry, brief intermission. But like we were saying, in the midst of all of that deepness, it's we have a different approach to comparison. And it's like disregarding the negative approach, although it will come to you, it's like thinking of a new approach to comparison. And I think Hannah was speaking on her experience. And for me, I don't know if mine is that deep, like the way she put it, like basically acknowledging that we are on our own individual paths. I think for me, mine kind of came from a negative space where it's like growing up in the community I did with classical musicians or classical musicians, because it really wasn't like, it really wasn't. It was very negative and I despised it. Like I refused to approach music in that way because it was so much like it wasn't only the students who were being like nasty towards me, it was the parents. And it's like, how are you talking about a child like that? Like I can understand a kid being competitive, but like a parent attacking a child, like me and my mom and my sister would just be like, and just mind my business. And I think to this point, to this day, like I think that's why I mind my business so much. It's because I just hate that. And I think for me, the reason why I approach comparison and like jealousy differently in regards to music is because I refuse to be the stereotype, which is a reality as a musician, if I'm being honest. And yeah.
I think that's important what you just said is like whenever you are feeling like you are comparing yourself to another person, first of all, check your ego because whenever you start to put another person down, even if you don't externalize it, like even if you don't like gossip about them or say it to their face, like please don't do that. But even if you just think it in your head, like, oh, well, I'm better than this person, like check yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, because we all have those days. We all have those days where we are not our best self, where we are not our best player. They happen more than we would like them to. So whenever you have those days, just remember, just remember those days. Whenever you, next time you are feeling like, oh, well, I'm better than this person. Like it can go both ways. Comparison can be, oh, I'm the worst, I'm never going to get better. Or it can be, I'm the best. If you're feeling
Mhm.
like I'm the best, then go find someone who's better than you and
Oh
hang out.
yeah.
You'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot.
That's sassy, Hannah. Nice to meet you. No,
Okay,
but
I feel like that was a lot on comparison, but all of that to say, like, first of all, you can only compare you to you. So if you are comparing, be sure that you are looking at yourself first. Be sure that you're looking at your own journey, the own growth that your own growth that you've made. And second of all, find a community that you can learn from and compare to in a healthy way. So, those are people who are going to build you up, who are going to offer you skills that are musical, but also just like skills as a person that will push you to be better and push you to thrive. I feel like we talk about that a lot, but Alex and I have, that's just been a big part of our story as Venn Duo. And it's also a big part of our lives now, is finding a community that challenges us to be better people and better musicians. And I feel like that has just been like such a cornerstone in both of our careers and just both of our lives. So we cannot like encourage that enough for all of you.
and I think something that I want to point out in general is that change is not easy, especially when it's for yourself.
Yeah.
Like being a negative Nancy to others is like a personality trait in a way. It's like how you operate, and it's difficult to just stop that within a day. Like it's not going to happen. So we're going to use Mama Shay's quote for a second. And I think every parent has said this at one point in their life. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. So when it comes to comparing yourself to others, and it could be both ways, whether you're saying that about yourself or if you're saying that about someone else. If you don't have nothing nice to say about yourself, don't say it. If you don't have anything nice to say about anyone else, don't say it. The end.
And there's Sassy Alex. She's happy to make an appearance on this pod too.
Oh, but honestly, I think that's the biggest takeaway. And it's just, like I say, it's the reapproach. Like, it's an unspoken thing, I think, too, because through memes and everything, we just look at the negatives and all of this, like imposter syndrome, comparison, what's disappointment. And it's like, okay, how do we overcome these things? These are the things people don't talk about. And I think that's why this pod is going to be so great, because it's like not only our perspective, it's our followers and viewers and listeners, because this is a podcast that's now available on Spotify.
Yes, it's available anywhere you get podcasts, thanks to Anchor. So find us on Spotify, Apple Music. Does Amazon have a podcast thing? They probably do. We're on YouTube. Yeah, so find us and listen to us whatever way is most convenient for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you to those of you who submitted your responses. Honestly, y'all are so wise. Like you had such great advice, and so we're really thankful for this community of just positive musicians and of wise people. So we really enjoyed reading them, and we appreciate all of you who follow us, who send us love on Insta, and who follow along with us on the Venn Pod. And we're so excited to meet some more of you at ICA Low Clarinet Fest in January 2023, Glendale, Arizona. We will see you there. We are so excited. Alex, what are we doing at this thing?
We're going to be doing, uh, we could call it this, a world premiere performance of a piece that our good friend Christopher Williams will be composing for us. And yeah, this is going to be exciting. And it's low clarinet. So either Hannah or I are going to be on bass, maybe both of
Hopefully,
us.
both of us. Yeah.
Let's see. I think this is going to be exciting.
I'm so excited. And we'll have another in-person Venn Pod, which, is always our preference. We love being in person and getting to talk to each other that way too. But for now, you get us on separate screens.
Yes. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Episode 5. Don't know what it is yet, but tune in for more.
It'll be coming soon. This has been the Venn Pod.